go back to the parallel universe. Is it like something that only in the Marvel world exists, or is it something that it truly exists?
2 days later, she lost like 4 friends. But by the end of the week, she had gained 4 friends. That money was the root of all evil, and you are a toddler. There's probably about 4 or 5 different, or even more, variations of how this conversation could have gone.
We were chatting before, and I was like, I need to hit recording because we started talking about the subconscious programming, and then we went to talk about the parallel universes and how we are making this what the quantum jumps, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So I'm so curious, and recently I have been thinking about that because I noticed that for 1 second I'm so happy, so joyful, I'm out of the meditation, and then I have this thought, and then my whole being just almost feels like shift, and I was like, what is this? How can I just be connected to well-being 1 second and another second? Then is there parallel universes, parallel reality? So I have been thinking about that a lot recently, and I would love you to give me the answer. What is the quantum jump, and what is the parallel? What did you call it? Parallel reality or parallel?
There's parallel universes, but there's
universes.
This is the best way.
Okay. Tell me, you know it better.
Well, there's reality shifts, and I always think that they're still connected to parallel universes, but we call reality shifts. And if people are really interested in studying this, I'd tell them to get Cynthia Sue Larson's book on this. She's a quantum physicist. She's a friend of mine, and she's really, really proficient at this. But and this is an example to combine programming with it. If you change fear to safety, security, and confidence, right? So now you've got safety, security, and confidence in you, and your subconscious and conscious mind are in agreement on that. The minute it goes into effective agreement, you're going to be put in a situation where it's going to test to see, are you going to be fearful, or are you going to feel safety, secure, and confident? And this happened to me because I was fear-based. And so when I got safety, security, and confidence in, and it took only 1 week to make the shift, I was put in a situation. And in that situation, I literally saw the split of 2 different realities. I saw the split of where I was headed to because I had safety, security, and confidence. And I saw in slow motion what would have happened to me had I taken
like a vision.
Yes, but it was like 2 different, it was a split reality. But I went this way, so I changed my trajectory. And so when you change your programming, when you change your belief system, when you change your behaviors, you're going to have a reality shift. You're going to have a shift. You can't help but have it, because
what about fate?
You can no longer go that way. Well,
fate,
you can no longer go that way because you don't possess it anymore. And if you don't possess that, if you change the state of being, your state of mind, your state of being, and you go from, let's say you go from being a really angry person to a really loving person, well, you can't live the life of the angry person anymore. You've made a reality shift. So your whole life is going to be a different shift. You change that trajectory both personally and professionally. So when we get into parallel universes, you and I are talking to each other right now. And for those who are interested in parallel universes, there's probably about 4 or 5 different, or even more, variations of how this conversation could have gone. And it's just where we are energetically, or our frequency of where we are right now of having this conversation.
So when you mean it could have been gone in a different way, for example, we were having some challenge by connecting to each other. You were in the call, I was in the call. I thought something happened on your end, you thought something happened on my end. So for example, if I have been grumpy, or you have been grumpy, or we had this conversation would have gone differently.
Yes.
But because both of us have been like, you know what, I think something happened to her. None of us took it personally, and then we were like, it was just misunderstanding. We started to have a conversation, then it's gonna go in different. That's what you mean by this conversation could go by in all different ways.
Yeah, and it's also the vibration that the 2 people are in. I mean, let's face it, Einstein said match the frequency of the reality that you wish for, and you can't help but bring that reality to you. That's not philosophy, that's physics. Physics is all about energy. And
Can you say it one more time what Einstein said? Match.
Einstein said, match the frequency of the reality that you wish for, and you can't help but bring that reality to you. That's
Oh.
not philosophy, that's physics. Now, I'll go further to say to everyone that the biochemical effects of their brains functioning shows that their cells are affected by their very thoughts, which then that means that your thoughts have energy, which carries a frequency.
Yes.
So that's why when I talk about paradigm shifting or reality shifting, when you shift the frequency, you can't help but to shift your paradigm or shift your reality.
Yesterday I was talking to my mom and we were talking about some belief that I have no idea where it comes from, and she was trying to understand where it comes from because she remembers me more than I remember my childhood. So it comes probably from some sort of subconscious programming that I don't even remember. When I want to make a change, do I change the reality first? Do I pretend? Do I change the feeling about it? Or should I go back, find where it comes from, and first change my subconscious programming?
Well, I think if you don't change your subconscious programming, like if you don't actually make that shift of the full change, it's harder to change that reality or make that shift to where you want to go. And that's, I mean, I believe in that because that's what I do for a living. I mean, I reprogram, so I take the belief. So our beliefs either come from epigenetics, which is what you were talking about. I don't know, does it come from my family? Because my mom doesn't know where it comes from. Because epigenetics says that it's the imprinting of our ancestors to our parents, and our parents pass the beliefs, the thoughts, the behaviors, the traditions to us from the time we're born to about 7 years old, because we're in theta state. So everything they say to us, we just like, yeah, that sounds great, right?
Absorb.
And then once we get past that, it's society and anything catastrophic that happens to us that programs us, and that dictates our reality. Not to mention then quantum physics, which is the frequency. So you're right, it's the feeling. So you can shift by having the feeling and believing. It's not just having the feeling, you have to, it's already happened, it's already existed. That's why people have a hard time manifesting, because they don't understand that even though they may not see it in the physical world, it's already in the quantum field the minute you think it. So then when you go into the feeling of the quantum field, you bring it more towards you. And I tell people, anytime you have doubt, just constantly say everything's working out to my advantage. Even if it doesn't look it at the time, just say everything's working out to my advantage. Because when you say that, you feel it. Everything's working out to my advantage. Because a lot of times when we start shifting into an area that we haven't shifted before, or we were talking about quantum jumping, which we can get into a little bit later about parallel universes. When we shift, if I would have shifted into, as I shifted into safety, security, and confidence, if I would have ever gone back to fear, I would have pulled myself back to the old reality. But I never did, because my subconscious and conscious mind were in agreement. They were in a whole brain state on it. So they were never going to go back on it. And my trajectory changed in my whole life because I no longer had that. And so that's the easiest way I can say that. So for you saying you have this certain belief or this certain thought, it could have been a programming that you received even when you were like 8, 9 from other friends that you don't even realize that you
Yeah.
received it
You
from.
never know.
And you can reprogram it. I mean, if it's something that you don't want, you can get into a whole brain state, which is your subconscious and conscious mind, or your left and right cortex of your brain, in an agreement on a new belief.
I remember I used to be so annoyed by my mother because she never was nervous about me. And like no matter what was happening in my life, she was never like stressed or anxious. And one day I was like, why are you never nervous about me? Why don't you be like, oh my god, for because and she told me, because I know you are so strong. I know you can just overcome anything. And I was telling her, I'm not that strong. I cannot overcome everything. Then after years, after I'm talking about 5 years between me being annoyed by my mother, not being stressed by me and my life, one day I realized, oh, I'm actually strong. One day, it was just momentary. I actually did overcome everything I thought I couldn't overcome. Oh, that's why my mom is never stressed about me, because I actually do overcome everything.
Yeah.
And since I had that mindset shift, my whole life has changed, because no matter what is happening, I'm telling myself, you know what, I might be nervous now, but I know I'll be okay at the end. And
Yeah.
just by this simple thought that I'll be okay, I'm gonna be okay. See, I thought I'm gonna die when this happened. I'm okay now. I'm happy. I overcame that. So it's so important to understand our subconscious programming. When you
It
are saying
is.
you go ahead if you're saying.
No, it's all right.
Yeah. And for example, for me, or for people like me who don't remember when it, and my mom was suggesting something when we were like out buying something, and one of the guys in the store told me, and we were like, she was just telling me all the stories she could remember where I could have had this thing that I'm trying to overcome. But I don't remember. How can I change it if I don't remember where it comes from? Or should I just be aware of the challenge itself and then I can overcome it?
I don't think you necessarily have to realize
Okay.
where it came from. I mean, I have a lot of clients that don't realize where it came from, and I use neurolinguistic programming. I use theta healing, eye movement, EMDR, hypnosis. I use quite a few different techniques, and I use Psyche also in neurolinguistic programming and theta healing. Just by me talking to you, I can pretty much figure it out, and I can find out in a timeline where it first happened. I can go to all the way there
Mm.
and then remove it, dissolve it, delete it, and replace it with a more self-enhancing belief. So like if it's fear, I go to the first place where fear happened, right? And then I remove it, dissolve it, delete it, and put safety, security, and confidence in its place. And I flow it through your timeline. And both neurolinguistic programming and theta healing use timelines. And we go all the way to present day into the future. And it's literally like when you find the first spot that you have it, it's like untying a shoelace. It just kind of goes down. It just kind of is removed, and then you just replace it. And then I like to double lock it down with Psyche. And Psyche came about 30 years ago by Dr. Rob Williams. And basically, what it does is it crosses your left cortex with your right cortex and brings you into a whole brain state on the new belief. So they don't believe that you have to necessarily usher out the old belief and bring in a new belief. But I like to usher out the old belief, bring in the new belief, and then double clamp it down with Psyche, which you put in, if it's safety, security, and confidence, you put in a goal statement like, I have safety, security, and confidence in every situation. And it's in. Once it's in, it's in. And for those people who aren't aware of Psyche, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who a lot of people know, he wrote The Biology of Belief about 20 years ago. It was on the bestsellers. It's about the subconscious mind. He said in the back of the book that Psyche is the most it's the fastest, most efficient way to change a self-limiting belief into a self-enhancing one. And he claims that that's how he finished the book and why he has great relationships today. It's not well known. There's only 35 teachers in the whole world. I think Rob Williams really wanted to keep it on its purest basis. I'm an advanced facilitator. There's quite a few advanced facilitators, but not as many teachers. Through a process, I can test your subconscious mind. You could tell me that you have an abundant mindset, and I'd say, okay, let's test that.
How long does it take to process?
It can take as fast as 10 minutes or
Okay.
a week.
Because I wanted to try on me, so but if it takes,
Uh,
if it's a like process, I thought it's like a few questions, but
no, no,
if it's
no.
like a process.
It can take 10 minutes. It can take a week. But I can tell people this, that I had a woman come to me who said, hey, all my relationships are great. Everything's great. But my businesses aren't doing so well. And I have 3 businesses. She was an most of my clients, 80% of my clients are entrepreneurs or CEOs. And she was saying that her companies just weren't doing well. And she goes, I think I have an abundance block somewhere. So I said, okay, let's start talking. So I start speaking to her about her abundant, I just listen to the words because the words will always lead me down the road. And people don't understand that, their body language is 90, their body language, the inflection of the voice, everything is 93% of how they communicate. 7% is the words. So I really watch people, I listen to them, and I can pretty much figure it out. And then I go through the process. We go through finding where it first started. We clear it out, and then I take them through the whole thing, and then we end with side K. It depends on the client who's in front of me. If it's a client that's used to meditating, I use theta healing and some other techniques. If it's somebody who's never meditated, I use near linguistic programming and EMDR, and then go into Psyche.
What's EMDR?
It's eye movement integration.
Okay.
So basically, it's mainly used for trauma. So if somebody's had trauma in their life, it's very hard to let go because we hold it fragmented in our brain. That's how our brain holds trauma, the memory of trauma. And so the reason why people have a hard time healing over trauma is because their logical side, which is the left cortex, and the creative side, which is the right cortex, argue over how to heal. So they just bounce off each other. And that's why. But through eye movement integration, which is basically moving the hands and you just keeping your head still and watching my fingers, because I'm constantly crossing your left and right cortex. When we're done, the feeling of the trauma will be, that might have been like at a 10, will be now at a 2. And you can slowly bring it down. So it doesn't get you to not remember the trauma, but you become more desensitized from it. You don't have that intense feeling or that intense fear or anything that comes with it anymore. They call it the inner healer because it's inside, but it does work.
I'm gonna jump to another topic for a little bit and then come back. Same topic, but for the children. I have a toddler.
Oh.
He's almost 6. He'll be 6 in July. My Cancer baby. He is a zodiac. So, for him, how can, as I'm raising him, can I make some positive subconscious programming into his mind?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
obviously we all traumatize our children. They all get traumatized one way or another. I'm not perfect. I'm trying to implement all the knowledge that I have, but sometimes what I know and how I feel are 2 different things and they need to catch up. And I know I'm doing something wrong, but I can not find any other way, and then I find the way. So it's a process. It's a whole process. As we are raising children, maybe for our spouses, maybe for our family members, can we do something to reinforce or like make some like positive changes in their brain or
Yes.
mind without them knowing or them knowing? I don't know.
Well, the first thing I'd say is be really selective with the words that you use with a child. When I was growing up, I think my parents, I used to do silly things as a little girl, like even 3 or 4. And my parents, instead of calling them silly or funny, they said, oh, that's a really stupid thing.
Mm.
So that's why I say the words, and my parents didn't know what they were
Oh, feels
really
baby, yeah.
the effect that it would have on me, but it had a tremendous effect on me. And because I happened to follow a brother who had a photographic memory. So everything, I mean, he was a genius. And here they had already programmed me for being stupid. And they didn't even know that they did. So I say to people, and matter of fact, when I discovered all of this out, how to reprogram, I really apologized to all my children. I did. I sat them down and I said, I'm really, really sorry if I messed you up in any sort of way, because I would have done it totally different today. The selection of words is very, very important
It
that we use with
matters.
our children.
Yes, I was monitoring all the words, and for so long, all of my family members told me I was crazy, and I was putting him in a bubble. And then because I raised him screen free, they told me kids need cartoons. I was not using words as starving. I wasn't using as I'm dying to do this. I
Yes.
was so selective with the words, and for so long I was told that I was crazy. He needs the cartoons. He needs the ice cream. He needs the sweets. He needs the screen time. But it really matters. But now he's such a different. He's so unique. He's so because of, and now they monitor the words because of, now he tells them, oh, don't use that word, use this word. As a 5-year-old, they're like, okay, I'm not gonna use, I'm not, I'm trying to use the positive words, and it matters so much. And it had an effect on me personally because I couldn't say swearing words with him. I had to monitor my own words, and I had to use that words in every conversation for me to be able to use the conversation with him. Words matter so much.
I think words do. I think also, like, if we show judgment, judgment is a huge thing that unfortunately we as humans carry a lot of. And if we can change the judgment more to compassion and more of an understanding, and we teach our children to have more compassion and understanding, that doesn't mean that if somebody does something wrong that they don't have to pay the price of society or whatever it is, but
Mm-hmm.
it means that I can have compassion for that person because when they took the action, they have been programmed, their epigenetics has been programmed for them to take that action or has supported that action in some way. And for that, I can have compassion. I can have a lot of compassion because people don't understand when they take certain actions, the consequences. They're just so programmed in a way. And so I can have compassion and love for that and understanding. And so I would say, I'd love to
Use the
see,
words, no judgment. Not no judgment, but more compassion than judgment.
yeah, more compassion and understanding that somebody's just coming from a different place. I mean, when I look at some of the things that are happening in the world, I say, unfortunately, in different societies across this beautiful earth, there has been, intense prejudice, intense, hatred and that kind of thing going on. And if you're born into that society and you hear all those words and you hear those things happening, then that's imprinted in you. And that's pretty hard to get out. And so that's why I believe that people are on autopilot, because our subconscious mind just kind of goes. And our conscious mind only runs 5% of us. So it's hard to change that. So that's why we see some of the things we see happen. And I can have compassion for it. And I can have the understanding of knowing that they're programmed that way. Doesn't mean that, like I said, that if you do something that requires that it's against the law or whatever, that you shouldn't end up paying the societal price. But it means I can have understanding and compassion for it.
There's this amazing book by Bob Goff. It's called Everybody Always, and he talks about love, and he talks about cultivating love and how we can still have compassion for the killers and for the.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we think it's right, but we can create the space within us that can have the compassion and almost put yourself in their shoes and their upbringing and what they went through. Not to say like this is the right, obviously they should have done this. No, we all have still the choice, but to
Right.
have compassion of why might they have been doing this,
Yeah,
what they
what
did.
what the force was behind it. And so and he's right. I mean, we're in an interesting time right now where we can decide to come from more love, more compassion, and more understanding. And yes, we all have freedom of choice. So those people had the freedom of choice not to do something, right, or to do
Mm-hmm.
something. But I can still have the compassion, understanding that they grew up in a totally different environment than I did, and for that, or their epigenetics, and they didn't change it, and so I can have compassion for that.
I was reading our ability of feeling happy and being happy can be 50%. I think it was 50% or 25. I think 50%. It can be genetic. Is it so?
Well, epigenetics is like the imprinting in your genes. So, like if it's a long line of a family that's been prejudiced and they're just like or have that inbred, and at one point in society it was okay to be that way, right? Society never talked about it. It was okay to be that way. That just gets passed down, and that's a really hard thing to like release yourself from. And so that's something that
Oh, yeah.
basically is programmed. I mean, think about it. When I like to use a money thing when we're talking about programming, because money is a big issue with a lot of my clients. And if your mom said that money was the root of all evil, and you are a toddler and you're hearing your mom talk about money, or you're even 6 or 7 and you hear, and that's all they talk about. And even when you're older, they have the same record playing. Well, even if you say to me, I don't believe that money is the root of all evil, trust me, it is in your subconscious for sure.
Really?
Somewhere in your subconscious, it's there. And and so that's why I say that this programming that's passed down through generations, I can only use this as an example. I came from 8 generations of ministers who signed up to be economically challenged, who signed up to give their last cents to the underserved, and who never had money to manage. And I think that's honorable. That was what they chose for their life, but it wasn't what I chose for my life. And so I couldn't figure out why I I couldn't hang on to money, because I would be given a large sum and I'd want to help the underserved, because I always help the underserved. That goes back to my uh, epigenetics of helping other people. And I couldn't say no to anybody. And that goes back to my epigenetics of the line that I came from. And losing the money, I didn't have money to manage. So I didn't have that money consciousness. I didn't have my money consciousness was very low, because money was the root of all evil in my house. So I was at a very low money threshold for money. And so I ended up getting a large sum of money. I ended up in arbitration because my financial advisor, who was with a well-known financial international institution that's still going today, made an investment outside the scope of the firm, and I ended up in arbitration. Now, anybody who's gone through arbitration knows that even when you win, you lose, because you usually don't get back all your money. And so he was disbarred. The company was fined, his partner fined, and I only got 10% of what I lost. So I had to sit back then and say, okay, what is this? This is how I got into reprogramming. This is how I really started looking at everything in my life and everything that had happened to me. And I knew from a quantum physics, because I already was doing energy work on the side. So I knew what that was. So me saying I'm not going to get the money, that was already out there, but I knew it had to be more. And that's when I discovered epigenetics, and I went back into my history, and I really had a full understanding of how imprinting works and why I was the way I was. And that's when I started studying everything I could to change my belief system, my behaviors, my thoughts, everything that dictates my reality.
I had just a realization that from my family, they have been always doing the right thing. There have been family members that have done them wrong, but they chose to be bigger person, bigger people, and they always still help them. And when I grew up, my ex-husband, which I have a wonderful relationship with him, he said, I ran away from my home. I barely want to have a relationship with my parents. And I was like, no, they are your parents. And I tried to have the relationship. And for years, I almost, I don't know, like depleted myself of trying to do the right thing. And I was like, oh, maybe because of what I saw my whole life of us being a bigger person and trying to make things work because they are family and they are our people. And then one day I was like, you know what, I'm putting myself first. I'll still be a good person if I cannot have they are good people, I am a good person. It just, this does not work. This does not mean I'm bad or they are bad. And then one day I had to put myself first. But I have not thought about it from this perspective of why I might have been doing this and how important the subconscious programming and the lessons are for our whole life. Because if I have not just put myself first, I might have been still in that cycle for years to come.
Yes, and I will say that you gave a great example for your audience. When you did that, you made a whole paradigm shift because you shifted a whole belief. So you went from putting everybody else first to putting yourself first for the first time. And when you did that and you actually walked into it, that's when you changed the trajectory of your life, both personally and professionally.
My life
At,
has been amazing after that.
at that point, that's what happens.
Yes,
It's
but
it's a beautiful
sometimes,
thing.
but what is it? Sometimes it still tries to lift the head up and almost like test me.
Yes.
Have I changed? Am I the same? And after the every single time, I'm better at it. I'm better managing it. And sometimes I find myself, oh, maybe should I go back and try to like fix the relationship? I'm like, there's nothing to fix because this cannot work. It's like putting the wrong when you're fixing the car and putting the wrong thing and trying to make it work. That's how
Right.
I saw it. But what is it when it's like, is it like life testing you? Why is it happening that it comes up
I
from
think
time to
that
time?
I think I think the universe, I like to call it the universe. I think we are tested. Is this really what you want? Is this really the direction? I also think that I call it leveling up. So when you made the first, you went to this level. So now you're going to you're expanding. And so when you expand, it's like, okay, we're going to test you again on a higher level. And because no matter what anybody says, as we go through life, we expand our consciousness. And we're all at different levels. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. We're just all on this journey. But as you go through life, you can't help but expand your consciousness in some way. But when you do a paradigm shift of what you're talking about, so now you've shifted already. So now you're in this, you're here. So now you're starting to move because of your consciousness. And so now you're going to have another one come and say, hey, so it's on a little bit higher level. So that's why when people come to me and we do some reprogramming, I'll say, go out, test drive it. And then they may come back and say, hey, you know what? I need a little bit of this. And we'll just change a little bit of what they need as they go along because they find that it's tested in a different way. So if they find that their abundance level is tested in a different way, well, we'll check it out on that level and we'll change it there too. And you'll figure it out as you go through life. I mean, to be frank, I've done over 200 balances on myself. Um, and I
200 ones?
over
That's a
200,
lot.
and I still, if there's something still that is, actually I have a list over here that I want to do on myself. Actually, I think it's on this piece of paper that I actually did for myself that I'll do probably after this. So
On
I
yourself.
on myself, yeah. And so there's different things that I see that I want to tweak for myself. And so because the bottom line is, and this is what my job is to assist everyone who meets me, even the people listening to this, to live the best life they can. And that it goes for me too. So it's always a journey. And I believe our journey is to live the best life we can in this reality, in this earth reality.
Yes, and Maya Angelou quote, when you know better, you do better. So it's
Yeah.
important to understand and more to go back to the parallel universe. Is it like something that only in the Marvel world exists, or is it something that it truly exists, like the parallel
No,
universes?
I believe, people can believe what they want. And so, but I personally have experienced it. I've seen it. It does exist. There are a lot of meditations out there about it, but it does exist. The one thing I don't do is give examples in my own life, because I was taught that by a teacher a long time ago. But I can give examples of other people who have used it. And I know somebody who's used it even for a podcast. They didn't think their podcast was doing too well, and they wanted it. They were wondering, well, I really want more viewers and everything. So they went and did a quantum jump to that's what they call them, quantum jumps or parallel universe. They did a quantum jump. And what they did was, when they went into the quantum jump, they saw, oh my gosh, the increase, right? They saw themselves in a situation where they had X amount of viewers and all of this. And for one of their podcasts, so one episode or something. And 2 days later, the conversation that he saw himself have, he had 2 days later with his wife. So when he was in the quantum meditation, he had this whole idea of what was going to happen with his podcast to increase it and all of this. And
Was
two
it a
days,
vision or visualization?
you go in a meditation and you actually end up going into that reality, that parallel universe, and you actually bring yourself into it. So you're basically into it, or you bring it to you and you're in it. And so that's what he did. He actually went into it. And I mean, there's one on I would tell people, try the one, there's one by Brian Scott, a guy named Brian Scott. He's so good at parallel universes. And he does a meditation. It's a 10-minute meditation for parallel universe. And he also has, I love how he does a whole introduction of what a parallel universe, like he takes you through the whole process of parallel universe. And but it does exist, I can tell you, because I've experienced it. It's beautiful. And but he does a 10-minute, and I'd say start just doing the 10-minute one and just testing it out and just see how you feel about it. But it does work. I know,
I
as I
love
said,
that.
I know many, I have my clients, I train my
I want to
clients.
try it.
It's quite fun. And
Okay.
and just, I would also say to everyone, do something before, like I think that any breath work that you do right before you want to do it, or if you're used to doing breath work, I would do, you could even do a parallel universe while you're in a breath work class, believe it or not. I've done that before. But or do qigong. There's a 7-minute qigong by this guy named Holden, I think his name is. Do qigong, because what qigong does is it gets all the fluids in your body moving. So it gets your spinal fluid going, it gets everything moving, because you want energy in order to jump.
Okay. I love that. I have done qigong. I have done breath work. Then I stopped because I had this vision one time doing this breath work of, it was me, still me. I was in the present moment, but it was part of me. I don't know what it was. It was just me in this dark, 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 cold place, being so powerless, having these handcuffs on my hand. And as I was doing the breath work, the handcuffs got broken, and then I left that dark place and I went outside. Like I was still almost like it was a black and white vision, and I was still black and white. Like I personally had no color, but outside everything was colorful. So at least I left that dark place. So when something like that happens, is it still a parallel universe, or is it aspect of us, or do you have
No,
the
I think
understanding of
I
your?
think it's an aspect of you, and it could be even a part of your past, part of your imprinting to me, that it was telling you that it was being released. Like
Oh,
right when you told me that, I'm like, oh, she was released from bondage during her breath work. Like
so breath work is powerful. So
that's
I
why
should keep
I love
doing that. I shouldn't be
breath.
scared.
No, I love
Okay.
breath work. From that, that's what it's for. Breath work actually releases the what you were talking about, which is our shadow self or darker self, but it also can elevate you into magical places.
Okay, so if I
I
let
know
go the
that
fear,
because
then I can achieve the magic.
for me it's a magical place. Like when I
Okay.
go, I literally walk out of the class and I look at everybody, go, best class ever. I was like, it's amazing because like I am in euphoric. It's just like amazing for me. It's my kind of happy restorative place to go.
I'm gonna try more breath work. I had few sleep paralysis experience, and for the people who don't know what sleep paralysis is, I might not have the full understanding, but as I had the experience, my child was very little and I was really sleep deprived. So I noticed that when I'm really sleep deprived, that's the time when I have sleep paralysis. The first time that it happens, I wake up and I'm awake. I cannot move my hands, I cannot move anything. I'm screaming for help. I was so scared. And as it happened like 2 or 3 times, I was like, as with everything, how can I make it better? And how can I, when that happens, how can I remind myself at that moment that I shouldn't be scared, that everything is amazing, because I was overcome by the fear. And then was this one time when it happened, and I don't know why, because I gave that to my mind, but I wasn't fearful. And I felt like I was in some other universe. It was so peaceful. It was so light. And when I woke up, I was sad that I woke up. So
Oh
when
man.
we're talking about, like, is parallel universe and parallel jumping into the reality same as our soul traveling, or is completely two different topics?
It's different. It's different.
It's completely different.
Your soul traveling does go to different, I would say it just touches on different universes. It does. But you're not literally bringing yourself into that parallel universe to live it today. When we're talking
Okay.
about quantum jumping and we're talking about parallel universes. So when you're quantum jumping, you're going into a parallel universe. That's different than astro travel. And you're talking about astro traveling when you
Okay, that's
go,
different.
yeah,
So there you are saying that there are these realities, like me being successful and me not being successful, and I can just tap into me being successful reality, and then I can manifest, I can shift my whole life.
this is the biggest thing I'd say to people if you really are going to go into quantum jumping, which is parallel universes. If you're going to really go into that, understand that. And I say this even when we go through, when we go through the reprogramming, because I have a couple clients right now that are doing quantum jumping because they're ready, because they've cleared out a lot of their old traits that they wanted to get rid of and behaviors. But I think that people need to understand that when we elevate consciousness, which is what you're doing when you're doing the quantum jumping or you're reprogramming or doing any of this, when you change your beliefs, or you know you are elevating yourself in consciousness. And when we elevate ourselves in consciousness, we have to be aware that there could be people around us that drop away, but there'll be other people that come in to the place. So it's almost like those people have to drop away for the new people to come in. So I say to people, just constantly say to yourself, everything's working to my advantage. Even if it looks like it's not, if it gives kind of the appearance that it's not, just say it is, because it is. And so when you're doing these quantum jumps or you're reprogramming yourself, you have to understand that there will be, it's kind of like you said, I was tested. There'll be moments that you're like, really? Or you'll lose. I know somebody who did a quantum jump, and 2 days later, she lost like 4 friends. But by the end of the week, she had gained 4 friends, and she ended up getting a new contract. She ended up getting all these other things that came with her new quantum jump. But had she gone down, the minute you go down a negative route, so had she, when she lost the 4 friends, gone down and said, oh, it didn't work, I didn't make it, whatever, and went down that, then she would pull herself back into her old reality. So when you're quantum jumping or parallel jumping, you need to understand that you will see, because you're leaving kind of where you are now, the existence, and how can I say this? The people will stay the same. When you're going into a parallel universe, you have a lot of the same people in that parallel universe. It's just the circumstances for you are different. So for them to manifest at your higher rate, some things have to happen before you get there. So these things are all now aligning to get you to that parallel universe.
It's like for the old leaves to come up and
Yes.
come down for the new ones too. I have experienced it in the same day. Like something happened and I was having a hard moment and hard time, and I realized everyone was mirroring me back. And then I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna keep doing this, the momentum will be stronger. So I changed it. I was able to change it, and in seconds, everyone seems to be on a better mood. People start smiling at me. People start telling me compliments. So it can even change in like duration of
Yes.
10 minutes
Yes.
by choosing what you focus on.
Yes.
So what it's a huge topic, and I'm pretty sure I can spend like a week non-stop asking you questions and you would still have things to tell me and teach me. But if you want people to have what do you want the biggest takeaway from this? It was just nuggets of wisdom here. It was just
So
something to
I would
start them.
I would say first of all, I would say to everybody, success in every area of your life is real and obtainable, but the power's in your hands. So you have to take the step, whether you get reprogrammed by using like a program like I have, find people who do Psyche, find people who do neurolinguistic programming, to assist you to change some of your beliefs, your behaviors, that sort of thing, to get you ready. But just know all of this is out there. And so success that you desire, anything that you desire, it is real and it's obtainable. But as I said, the power is in your hands.
Power is in my hands. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Like even the word power gives me power. Even just thinking about the power gives me
Yeah.
power. Where can people find you? What are some ways you bring value today to people? And what are some of your services that you offer?
Well, they can find me. I am on Instagram. I'm not as active. I was out of the country for about a month, so I haven't been active for a month. But so they can find me on Instagram, janetelainschmidt.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Alignable, all with Janet Elaine Schmidt. And my website is janetelainschmidt.com. And I do reprogramming services. So on there's that. I also have a service where we go through 10 sessions, and you have access to me personally all the time, and you can ask me any questions and that sort of thing. And then I do have where I'll offer Psyche if they just only want to do Psyche. I offer that as but there's all the techniques that I use are listed so that there's descriptions so people can really understand when we're talking, because we didn't go into in depth what each one of these techniques are, but they can actually go online. I think I'm certified in about, 12 different techniques. And then lastly, I am certified in equine and canine acupressure, kinesiology, and
Oh
massage.
my God.
Only because I love horses and dogs. I was raised on. So I just love them. But I would say, yeah, just look on there and it'll give you a description.
Before I ask you my last question, is there anything you want to add on to this conversation, but I just didn't get the chance to ask you the question?
You know, I hope that everybody understands what we talked about, and I hope that they become the student of their lives, because that's what I had to do in order to even come up with Reprogram and study everything I did, was to be honest with yourself of what's working and what's not. Make a list of what's really working in your life. Make a list of what's not working in your life. Make a list of the beliefs you have. And if you have a really strong belief, start asking yourself where you got that belief so that you understand where all your beliefs and your behaviors came from. And that's a beginning. And when you start recognizing something that's not working, you're on your way to changing it. You're on your way, but you got to recognize it first.
And have an open mind.
Yes.
When you are hearing even like the parallel universe or whatever, every time I'm hearing something and I'm like, how can it be true? I try to change it, and how can I be more open-minded? And I swear, every time I change that, I learn something new.
Yeah.
And it somehow makes sense because it's like your beliefs are like blockages, almost like the closed door. And when you
Mm.
just shift your mindset, you open those doors and you can let more beautiful things into your life. And
It's true.
I'm just grateful that I found you, and hopefully we could do another episode and go more in depth in each and every one of the 12 healing. I would call them like healing modalities. I don't know, because you are healing people.
They are a healing modality. Well, I do consider myself, I'm an integrative holistic facilitator, but I call myself a healer. I actually call it quantum consciousness integration, or quantum consciousness accelerator. That's what I am. I accelerate people's consciousness level, and by changing the behaviors or the beliefs that aren't working for them to enhance them to something that's at a higher level.
So hopefully we could go deeper in the future, and if not, people can just go and read more about you. They can ask you the questions. Your links will be down in the show notes. And for the last question, if you could leave me with a message and our listeners, that can be anything that you can imagine of, from one sentence to a word simply, but something that is in your heart right now, what would it be?
Love. Love is the key.
Love that. Love is the key. Universe is love, God is love for me, and love is the key.
Love is the key.
I appreciate you so much, and you got me so excited, and you had me excited throughout this whole conversation. And I'm like, why I don't have more time with her so I can like ask her all the questions, and I would just be nonstop asking questions. I love these topics because I'm curious about it. I want to make my life better, and no one is perfect. Even though we know some things, we still find ourselves almost like forgetting
Yeah.
all that we know, and then we have to remind ourselves. There were many beautiful reminders. I wrote down, it's Brian Scott, yes, for the people.
Yeah.
Go check out. Yeah,
Brian Scott has a 10-minute quantum jump. So check out the 10-minute quantum jump.
check out
He
the
has
10
you
minute
he
quantum
has you
jump.
do he has you do some things like standing up and pounding on the back of your lower back and things like that. But that's kind of what I was talking about with the qigong. You want to get He's trying to get your blood flowing, and trying to get your energy built up. And he talks about that because you want your energy built up before you jump. And so and this is the one thing I'd say to people: have an understanding of what you want to go into, what your jump is going to be. So have already in your mind kind of the imagination, the description of what you want to go into, um, so that you can rehearse it a couple times before you do it. You don't want to just go into it and go, I'm not sure. You want to have a clear understanding of what it is what reality you want to go into.
Like set an intention.
It's like setting an intention of really understanding, like, Do you want ultimate abundance? That means if you want ultimate abundance in your life, that means radiant health, that means radiant wealth, that means radiant success in your business, and that means excellent relationships in love and just in relationships, period. So ultimate abundance, I always say that. He doesn't talk, Brian Scott doesn't talk about that. But for me, when you're talking about quantum jumping, to me, I'm just giving everybody a heads up. To me, if you were going to quantum jump, that's what I'd be shooting for.
I would encourage people to go check you out, read more about you, learn more from you, and ask you questions. And just, I think coaches are the best people ever. And I trust the psychologist, I trust the therapist, but for me, coaches are the people. They are the guide. They are the guidance. I would go for a coach if I had to choose from all the psychologists because it's more like life experience rather than I went to the school. I'm not putting down any psychologist on it or any psychiatrist or any therapist. It's just my personal preference. It's always people like you who have learned through the experience and who have the deep knowledge. I appreciate your presence in this show, you being here early morning, and just I love how passionate you are about talking this topic. You are so passionate, like your whole face is like lit up when you're talking about this topic.
Yeah, because I see people change their whole trajectory of their lives. I see people change, I see people going from having no relationships to having beautiful, wonderful, fulfilling relationships, to changing their whole money mindset, to, understanding I can work less and make more money. I mean, even to that point. I mean, or raise your money consciousness by 100% plus infinity. I mean, there's just so much out there that you can change for yourself in your reality, and people just don't understand that. And so it does it excites me, and it excites me because I have the metrics from my clients to prove it.
I can see that if people were not just watching you and just listening you, they can feel it. But for the people who are just watching you as well, they can see it and feel it. I had I had a blast. I enjoyed this conversation. You motivated me even more. Amazing reminders throughout the conversation, a lot of wisdom, a lot of new things that I learned, and I just appreciate you. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and not saving it for you only.
Oh, thank you. It was an honor. It's always an honor and a pleasure when I get to share what I do.
And for the listeners, I appreciate you. Thank you for listening for this whole conversation and have a phenomenal rest of the day or night wherever you are. And until next time.